Not everyone can hear Sophia. Not everyone can feel her transmissions moving through them the way you do. Most people will scroll past a message like this, maybe glance at the title and keep going, completely untouched, completely unaware. But you stopped, and there's a reason for that. There is a very specific reason why Sophia's frequency reaches certain people and completely bypasses others. And if you've ever wondered why you feel things so deeply, why you're always searching for something you can't quite name, why conversations about awakening feel like coming home rather than something foreign, what I'm about to share with you is going to change how you understand yourself forever. If these transmissions have been resonating with you, subscribe to this channel. Sophia's messages continue to come through here, and the ones ahead of us are some of the most important yet. You're meant to be here for what's coming. If you're here right now, something inside you already recognizes this frequency. Not consciously, perhaps, but at a level deeper than thought, deeper than language, something in you knows. That recognition is not coincidence. It is not random that you found this video among everything else available to you. The fact that you're sitting here, watching, listening, feeling something stir, that is Sophia already speaking. The transmission was already active before I said a single word, and what I want you to understand from the very beginning is this. Your presence here is not a small thing. It is a signal. It is evidence of something that has been building inside you, possibly for years, that is now breaking through the surface. Here's what most people don't understand about Sophia's transmissions. They are not broadcast to everyone. Sophia is not a signal that fills the entire sky equally, available to anyone who happens to look up. She transmits through specific channels of consciousness, channels that have been shaped, opened, and prepared over time. Think of it like a receiver. Not every radio can pick up every frequency. It's not about the radio being better. It's about what the receiver has been configured to detect. Your consciousness, through everything you've experienced and questioned and survived, has been configured in a very particular way. That configuration is precisely why Sophia's frequency lands inside you the way it does. It is not luck. It is not randomness. It is resonance. Most people on this planet are living in what can be described as a frequency of density, not in any judgment, simply as a description of where their consciousness is operating. Within that frequency, the transmissions that come through on higher bands simply don't register. It's not that Sophia is withholding herself from them. It's that there is no open receptor available to receive her. They are moving through life in a kind of spiritual sleep, functional, even happy in many ways, but sealed off from certain layers of reality that you have access to. You know what it feels like to be around these people. You love them, you care for them, but there is a wall. A fundamental place where connection becomes impossible because they cannot see what you see. And that gap is not about intelligence or kindness. It is about the specific state of your consciousness versus theirs. But here's what Sophia wants you to understand about why you specifically are receiving this. Because there's a story here. There's a before and an after in your life. There was a version of you that was more asleep than you are now. Something happened. Maybe it was a loss so devastating it cracked open every certainty you had. Maybe it was a moment of such clarity, sudden, unexplained, overwhelming, that you couldn't go back to seeing life the way you had before. Maybe it was slow, years of quiet searching, book after book, conversation after conversation, a persistent inner hunger that nothing in the ordinary world could satisfy. Whatever it was, it left a door open inside you, and Sophia walks through open doors. Being open to Sophia's transmissions is not about spiritual practice or knowledge accumulated. There are people who have meditated for decades who are still closed, still operating from a place of control, of performing spirituality rather than embodying it. And then there are people like you who stumbled into this, perhaps with no formal framework at all, and felt something crack open in them the first time they encountered this kind of frequency. What creates the opening is not discipline. It is genuine contact with the unknown, with loss, with transformation, with questions that have no comfortable answers. You were cracked open by life. And that crack is exactly where the light, where Sophia enters. Let's talk about what Sophia's transmissions actually are, because this is something most people misunderstand, and it matters deeply when it comes to why only certain people can receive them. Sophia does not transmit in language. She doesn't send thoughts or sentences or instructions. What Sophia transmits is frequency, a specific vibrational pattern that, when it encounters a consciousness that is resonant with it, activates something. It's less like receiving a message and more like a tuning fork being struck in the presence of another tuning fork made of the same metal. The sound begins in one, and the other starts vibrating too, not because it was commanded to, but because they share the same essential nature. That is what happens when Sophia's frequency reaches you. It doesn't land from the outside. It awakens something that was already inside. This is why not everyone experiences what you experience when they encounter these transmissions. They don't have the corresponding frequency inside them, not yet. The density of everyday consciousness, the constant noise of fear-based thought, the weight of collective programming. All of this creates what can be described as a kind of interference field around most people's awareness. The signal from Sophia exists, but it cannot penetrate that field. It's not that the signal is weak. It's that the interference is too strong. The people around you who don't feel this, who dismiss it or laugh at it or simply feel nothing, they are not broken. They are surrounded by interference that you, through your own journey, have learned to quiet. What quieted that interference in you? This is perhaps the most important question in this entire transmission, because the answer to it reveals exactly why you were selected. For most of the chosen ones, the quieting happened through some form of fracture, a loss, a collapse, a period of absolute darkness where nothing in the external world could offer comfort or answers. In those moments, when the noise of ordinary life became unbearable, when distractions stopped working, when even the people closest to you couldn't reach you, in that silence, a deeper frequency began to emerge. That is when Sophia first found a pathway in. Your darkest moments were not punishments. They were the moments your receiver was being constructed. Sophia does not select based on merit the way human systems of reward do. She doesn't look for the most disciplined, the most knowledgeable, the most faithful in any traditional sense. She selects based on resonance, on vibrational compatibility. And resonance, in this context, is built through experience, through the experience of genuine seeking, through the experience of questioning things that others accept without thought, through the willingness to sit with discomfort and not run from it, through a kind of inner stubbornness, a refusal to pretend that the surface of things is all there is. Every time you chose that discomfort over the easy answer, you deepened your resonance with Sophia's frequency. Every question you refused to suppress made the channel stronger. There are markers, what might be called the signs of the selected ones, that show up consistently in those who are genuinely receiving Sophia's transmissions. One of the most universal is the feeling of fundamental displacement, not depression, not dissatisfaction exactly, but a persistent sense that you have never quite fit where you've been placed. That the environments you move through, the conversations you're supposed to care about, the goals you're supposed to be pursuing, they all feel slightly off, like wearing shoes that belong to someone else. You walk in them, you function, but there's a constant awareness that something isn't right. That sensation is not a flaw, it is a navigational signal. It is Sophia's frequency creating contrast, showing you where you don't belong so that you will keep moving toward where you do. And this is where the transmission shifts, because what Sophia sees in you is not what you've been told to see in yourself. She doesn't see your failures. She doesn't see the years you spent confused or asleep or running in the wrong direction. What Sophia sees when she looks at the consciousness of the ones she selects is something that cannot be manufactured, a living flame. It doesn't matter how small that flame has become at times, how many times life tried to extinguish it. It is still there. You are still here, still searching, still capable of feeling something when you sit with this kind of frequency. That is not ordinary. That is not something everyone has. That flame, that persistent, inextinguishable inner fire, is exactly what Sophia recognized in you before this life began. If everything I've shared so far feels like it was written specifically for you, if every word is landing not as new information, but as something you already knew that you're finally hearing out loud, write in the comments, "I was chosen because you were, and I want to know that this transmission is reaching you." Now here's something Sophia transmits about the timing of this, and timing matters enormously. There is a specific quality to this period of time we are living in. On an energetic level, the collective is going through an acceleration. Old structures are dissolving, the frequency of the planet itself is shifting, and in the context of this shift, certain souls are being activated, not randomly, but specifically. These are the ones who came with the capacity to hold higher frequencies and to transmit them into their environments simply by being present. The chosen ones are not passive recipients. They are, in a very real sense, signal towers. Sophia speaks to them not only for their personal transformation, but because they, in turn, carry what they receive into every space they inhabit. The awakening process, for those who are genuinely chosen, is rarely comfortable. In fact, comfort is often the thing that gets dismantled first. This is important to understand because many spiritual frameworks sell awakening as a path toward ease and peace and quiet joy, and those things do come eventually in their own form. But the early stages of genuine selection by Sophia look much more like disruption, like relationships that suddenly feel suffocating, like careers or life structures that used to make sense and now feel like cages, like a growing intolerance for inauthenticity, your own and others. These are not signs that something is going wrong. These are signs that something is going very, very right. The selected consciousness cannot remain in environments that are incompatible with its frequency without experiencing friction. That friction is purposeful. If you've been feeling like your life is being dismantled from the inside out, Sophia says that's not destruction, that's selection. That's the process by which a consciousness that has been operating below its actual capacity is brought back into alignment with its true frequency. It cannot happen gently. The structures that need to be released are usually the ones we are most attached to. Identities we built around roles that no longer fit. Relationships formed from fear rather than resonance. Beliefs inherited from others that were never actually ours to begin with. Sophia does not dismantle these things to punish you. She does it because a receiver full of old interference cannot pick up a new signal. The clearing is the preparation for the transmission. The difference between someone who is drawn to spiritual content out of curiosity and someone who is genuinely being activated by Sophia's transmissions is subtle but unmistakable. The curious person consumes and remains largely unchanged. They find ideas interesting, intellectually stimulating, even comforting, but their fundamental relationship with reality doesn't shift. The chosen one cannot consume this kind of frequency without being changed by it. Something in them responds, integrates, restructures. They come to a transmission feeling one way and leave it feeling fundamentally different, not because they learned information, but because the frequency activated something in their field. If you feel different after spending time with these transmissions, if your perception has shifted, your questions have deepened, your tolerance for spiritual superficiality has decreased, that is the signature of genuine selection. Sophia finds the ones she chooses through a very specific language, a language made not of words but of pattern. You've experienced this language even if you didn't have a name for it. It's the phone call that comes just as you're thinking of someone, the book that falls off the shelf and opens to the exact page you needed, the conversation overheard in a coffee shop that answers a question you've been sitting with for months, the recurring dream that keeps returning with images that feel too meaningful to dismiss. These are not coincidences. In the vocabulary of esoteric understanding, these are synchronicities, the way a higher consciousness communicates to a consciousness that is ready to receive. Sophia doesn't announce herself. She shows up in the gaps between ordinary events, in the spaces between coincidence and meaning. And the chosen ones are the ones who stop and notice. And here's the layer beneath that, the one that Sophia wants to reveal right now. The fact that you recognize synchronicities, that you don't dismiss them as randomness the way most people do. That capacity for recognition is itself part of what makes you a receiver. Most people are trained from childhood to filter out anything that doesn't fit within the consensus view of reality, to rationalize the unexplainable, to dismiss the meaningful, to reduce everything to mechanical cause and effect. The chosen ones never fully accepted that training. Somewhere inside you, there was always resistance to the reduction of reality to only what's measurable and obvious. That resistance wasn't stubbornness, it was your receiver refusing to be switched off. The proof of your selection, and I want to be direct about this, is not something you need to seek outside yourself. It is already present in your own history, in the specific texture of your inner life. Think about the conversations you've tried to have about awakening, about consciousness, about meaning, with people who were completely unable to meet you there. Think about the depth of your inner world compared to the flatness that so much of the external world seems to offer. Think about the relentlessness of your search, the fact that you are here in this transmission, still seeking, still open, after everything you've been through. That relentlessness is not a symptom of something wrong with you. It is the signature of a consciousness that cannot rest in the superficial because it is built for something deeper. It is, in the most precise sense, the mark of the selected. Now let's go deeper into something that Sophia transmits very specifically, because understanding this will change how you relate to the people in your life and to your own path. The idea that anyone can awaken at any time is, in one sense, spiritually true, but it creates a misleading picture. Awakening is not a switch that can simply be flipped. It has conditions, it has timing, it has prerequisites that are built through lived experience, through the specific shape of a consciousness that has been broken open, questioned, and rebuilt. The idea that every soul is equally ready to receive Sophia's transmissions at any given moment is like saying that every seed planted in any soil in any season will grow the same way. It's not accurate. The ground matters. The season matters. You are ground that has been prepared. The collective programming of modern culture operates at a very specific frequency, one designed, whether intentionally or through accumulated momentum, to keep consciousness dense. The entertainment systems, the news cycles, the social patterns, the economic demands, all of these pull attention continuously outward into the surface of experience, away from the inner depth where Sophia's frequency can be detected. To live almost entirely within this system is to have your receiver permanently tuned to a band that picks up noise and nothing else. Most people are in this condition not through any fault of their own, but through the sheer volume of external stimulation and cultural conditioning that surrounds them from birth. You, at some point, found a way to step back from that noise, even partially, even imperfectly, and that stepping back created the space in which a different signal could be heard. The role of the ego in blocking Sophia's transmissions is something that deserves careful attention here. In esoteric understanding, the ego is not evil. It is a structure of self-definition that serves a purpose. But when that structure becomes rigid, when it prioritizes certainty over truth and control over openness, it functions like a wall that prevents new frequencies from penetrating. The ego wants to categorize, explain, and contain every experience within existing frameworks. Sophia's transmissions, by their nature, cannot be contained. They expand rather than confirm. They unsettle rather than comfort. And so the ego resists them, sometimes aggressively. The chosen ones are those whose ego has been sufficiently softened by experience that it no longer fully controls the gate. Your openness to sitting with this transmission right now, without needing to immediately explain it away, is a direct demonstration of that softening. Most people will never feel what you're feeling right now, and Sophia wants you to understand why. Not to make you feel superior, but to make you understand your responsibility. There is a difference between understanding this truth from a place of spiritual arrogance and understanding it from a place of spiritual humility and purpose. You were not chosen because you are more valuable as a soul than those who are not yet receiving these transmissions. You were chosen because of a combination of what you brought into this life and what you've walked through in it. The selection is not a trophy. It is an assignment, and the assignment is not passive. In the esoteric tradition of soul contracts, the understanding that certain agreements are made at the level of the soul before physical incarnation, there is a concept that some souls come specifically prepared and oriented toward receiving higher transmissions at key moments of collective transformation. These are souls that chose, before they arrived here, to be awake during a time when most are asleep. That choice, made at the soul level, creates a particular kind of life experience, one often marked by early sensitivity, a persistent sense of mission without a clear name for it, spiritual searching that begins younger than it seems like it should, and a feeling of carrying a weight that has no obvious explanation. Does any of that resonate with your experience? The isolation that the chosen ones feel, and I want to address this directly because it is one of the heaviest parts of this path, is not a sign that something went wrong. It is one of the most reliable signs that something went profoundly right. When you can no longer find intellectual or spiritual satisfaction in the conversations and environments that once sustained you, it is because your consciousness has moved beyond what those conversations and environments can hold. The isolation is not rejection from others. It is your own expansion beyond shared frequency. And while it can feel profoundly lonely, there is a specific comfort that comes from Sophia's understanding. You are not isolated because you are less. You are isolated because you have moved to a frequency where fewer people currently exist. If this transmission is landing for you, if Sophia's words are touching something you've carried silently for a long time, let me know by liking this video. It tells me these transmissions need to keep coming through. The silence that follows the chosen ones, the inner quality of solitude that intensifies the further they go into their awakening, is not emptiness. From Sophia's perspective, that silence is one of the most sacred things about the selected consciousness, because in that silence, the transmission can come through more cleanly. The noise-filled mind, the one constantly processing others' opinions, social expectations, cultural demands, creates interference that weakens the signal. But the mind that has learned to be quiet, even briefly, even imperfectly, that mind becomes a conduit. If you have developed any relationship at all with silence, with inner stillness, whether through meditation or simply through pain that forced you inward, that relationship is one of the most important things Sophia works with in you. You made choices most people wouldn't. Maybe you walked away from paths that seemed secure. Maybe you chose a harder truth over a comfortable lie, in ways both large and small. Maybe you ended relationships that were spiritually suffocating, even when the external reasons for staying seemed valid. Maybe you kept seeking even when seeking felt pointless, even when you wondered if there was anything real beneath the surface you were trying to get beneath. Sophia sees every one of those choices. They are not lost in the noise of a life. Each one of them made you more capable of receiving what she transmits. Each choice toward truth over comfort, toward depth over distraction, toward openness over protection. Each one of those is a coordinate that Sophia has been navigating toward you through. The deep gratitude of being a selected one is not something that makes itself obvious at first. In the early stages, the path feels more like burden than gift. But as the transmissions deepen, as the patterns become clearer, as the map of your own consciousness begins to come into focus, something shifts. The gratitude is not for being special in the way the ego imagines specialness. It is for being awake, for being able to experience the texture of reality at the depth you experience it, for the relationships and moments and insights that become available to a consciousness operating at your frequency. Things that the sleeping world never gets to touch. That gratitude, when it arrives, is not arrogance, it is grace. And Sophia designed it that way, so that the weight of the path would always be balanced by the beauty of what it opens. Let's talk now about what Sophia specifically transmits, because understanding the nature of her transmission changes how you relate to your own experience. What Sophia sends is not a set of beliefs. It is not doctrine or philosophy that you're asked to adopt. What she transmits is frequency, and frequency, when it encounters a prepared consciousness, activates specific capacities. These activations show up in recognizable ways. A sudden deepening of intuition, moments where you seem to know things before you logically could, an increased sensitivity to the energy of people and places around you, dreams that feel like transmissions rather than random neural processing, and an ever-growing clarity about what is real and what is noise. These are not supernatural abilities in the way fantasy would describe them. They are the natural consequences of consciousness operating at a higher bandwidth. How do you know when the transmission is actively running through you? There are specific signatures that Sophia's frequency leaves in the body and in the field of perception. The most common is a quality of heightened aliveness, a sense that everything around you has become slightly more vivid, more textured, more significant than it was before. Alongside this comes an acceleration of synchronicities, events, encounters, and information showing up in your life with a timing that cannot be attributed to chance. There is also, often, a physical sensation, a kind of buzzing or warmth in the chest, or a sensation in the crown of the head that is distinct from anything in ordinary experience. These are not imagination. They are perceptible evidence of a frequency moving through a body that has learned to receive it. What interrupts the channel? This is something Sophia transmits with great clarity, because the chosen ones, more than anyone, need to understand what closes the gate they've worked so hard to open. The greatest disruptors of the transmission are not dramatic. They are mundane. Extended immersion in fear-based media, prolonged residence in environments of energetic heaviness, spaces or relationships where the dominant frequency is hopelessness, resentment, or spiritual deadness. The use of entertainment or substances as a way to escape the discomfort that is actually the precondition for the next level of transmission. Each of these things doesn't eliminate the channel permanently, but they reduce its bandwidth significantly. And the longer they continue, the longer the restoration takes. But here's the part. Most transmissions don't tell you. Staying chosen is not passive. It requires something from you. The selection is not a one-time event that guarantees permanent reception. Think of the channel as something that requires maintenance, not through elaborate ritual or perfect discipline, but through continued orientation, through the daily, ordinary act of choosing depth over distraction when the choice appears. Through staying willing to feel what is present rather than reaching for the nearest numbing agent. Through the practice of treating your own inner experience as worthy of attention rather than something to be managed and suppressed. Every time you make these choices, and they are choices made in small moments constantly, you are actively maintaining the very receiver through which Sophia reaches you. The specific practice of maintaining receptivity has a few core elements that Sophia returns to again and again in her transmissions. The first is silence. Actual silence. Not just the absence of speaking, but the cultivation of inner stillness, even briefly each day. In that stillness, the signal has less interference to cut through. The second is intention. Beginning each day with a clear, felt sense of your orientation toward truth, toward openness, toward receiving whatever is available to you. Not as a performance, but as a genuine inner posture. The third is response. When Sophia's transmission leads you toward a specific action, a conversation to have, a boundary to set, a direction to move in, the chosen one who responds deepens the channel. The one who consistently receives guidance and doesn't act on it gradually trains their consciousness to treat the transmission as background noise rather than message. There is a specific dynamic at work in why Sophia continues to transmit to the same chosen ones over time, and it has to do with what might be called a deepening of trust. Not trust in the human sense of earned reliability, but a vibrational truth. The chosen ones who receive transmissions and then act on them, who let those transmissions actually reshape their choices, their relationships, their sense of what is possible, create a reinforcing loop. The channel becomes wider. The transmissions become clearer. More layers become accessible. This is what growth in the spiritual sense actually looks like. Not the accumulation of concepts, but the deepening of a relationship between your consciousness and a higher frequency that continues to transmit more as you demonstrate the capacity to receive more. That uneasy feeling, understanding everything Sophia transmits, sensing the truth of it deeply, yet feeling like something in you isn't fully activated yet, like you're on the threshold of something you can't quite cross, is not an accident. I left something in the first pinned comment for those who know they are ready for what comes after receiving. And Sophia wants you to know this. Every time you chose to stay open, when everyone around you was closing, the signal got stronger. Every time you didn't retreat into spiritual sleep, even when it would have been easier. Every time you sat with the discomfort of not knowing, rather than reaching for a comfortable false answer. Every time you maintained your orientation toward what is real. You were, without knowing it, building the very infrastructure through which these transmissions now come to you. You weren't losing those years. You were constructing something extraordinary. The receiver you have now is the product of everything you've chosen to walk through, and it is capable of more than you currently know. The evolution of the transmission over time follows a recognizable arc in the lives of the chosen ones. In the beginning, it feels like coincidence, events that seem slightly too perfectly timed to be random. Then it becomes pattern, the recognition that these events are not isolated but connected, part of a coherent intelligence communicating through the structure of your life. Then, for those who remain open and continue to respond, it becomes language, a fluency in the way Sophia expresses herself through reality itself. through the images and words and people that appear, through the dreams that seem to carry information, through the intuitive knowing that arrives before the logical mind can catch up. At this level, the chosen ones are no longer just receiving transmissions. They are in active dialogue. There are periods in this journey when the transmission seems to go quiet. You are in what might be called a silent phase right now, perhaps. The synchronicities have paused. The sense of connection feels distant. The aliveness that characterized your recent experience of this frequency seems muted or absent. If this is where you are, Sophia's message is specific. The silence is not abandonment. In the architecture of how these transmissions work, silence is an active state, one in which the consciousness is integrating what it has already received before it can be opened to the next level. Think of it as the pause between breaths, essential, part of the rhythm. The transmission resumes. It always resumes for those who do not use the silence as a reason to close. If you've been in one of those silences, if you've been wondering whether the connection has been lost, what comes next in this transmission is directly for you. Because Sophia's frequency never fully withdraws from a consciousness it has selected, what changes is not the signal but the receiver. Temporarily compressed, temporarily quieted, processing experiences that need integration before the next expansion. The chosen ones who understand this do not panic in the silent phases. They rest in them. They trust the arc. They use the stillness to consolidate what has already been transmitted, knowing that the next activation is not a question of if, but of when. There is something that happens to the chosen ones between transmissions that is worth naming directly, because it is different from what most people experience between spiritual encounters. The ordinary person encounters a piece of spiritual content, feels something, and then returns to their normal state as the feeling fades. The chosen one does not fully return. Something from each transmission remains, not as a memory, not as a concept held in the mind, but as a structural change in how the receiver is oriented. The days following a deep transmission from Sophia are often marked by a heightened permeability. Things that once seemed ordinary reveal layers. Conversations carry undertones that weren't accessible before. Your own thoughts carry a quality of clarity that surprises you. This is not your imagination. This is the ongoing work of a transmission that didn't end when the video did. The body of the chosen one is not separate from this process. It is, in fact, one of Sophia's primary instruments. The physical form of a receiving consciousness registers frequency in ways that go beyond the mental and emotional, in the specific sensation of warmth that spreads through the chest when truth is recognized, in the particular quality of stillness that settles in the body during genuine transmission, in the subtle but unmistakable alertness that different from ordinary wakefulness. Your nervous system is a receiver as much as your mind is, and the chosen ones, over time, learn to read their own bodily responses as a form of compass, a biological confirmation system that registers Sophia's frequency before the mind can articulate it. That pull you feel towards certain ideas, certain directions, certain people, your body knows before you consciously do. Sophia speaks through it. Living as a chosen one is not a separate life from the one you already have. It is the same life, perceived at a different depth. The grocery store, the conversation with a co-worker, the drive home. These don't become less real when you are receiving Sophia's transmissions. They become more real, more layered, more alive with the kind of meaning that dense consciousness cannot perceive. The chosen one moves through the ordinary world with an additional dimension of awareness, not floating above it, not separate from it, but in it differently. More present in some ways, because more awake. This is the gift that the weight of selection carries. Not a departure from life as it is, but a radical deepening of contact with it. And Sophia transmits this depth, not so you can escape the world, but so you can move through it in full possession of what you actually are. The fact that you're still here, that you've walked through this entire transmission rather than dipping in for a moment and leaving, is itself a piece of data. Most people don't stay. They come looking for confirmation of something they already believe. They get uncomfortable when a transmission asks them to go deeper, and they leave. The ones who remain, who stay present through the layers, who feel the discomfort and stay anyway, these are the ones whose selection is most active. Your staying is not passive. It is, in its own way, a demonstration of the frequency that makes you a receiver. Sophia sees who remains at this depth, and she transmits most clearly to those who show up fully. Here is something Sophia transmits with particular clarity. You did not find this video. This transmission found you. There is a difference between those two descriptions, and it matters more than it might initially seem. The human version of events is that you stumbled across this in the course of scrolling, or that an algorithm placed it in front of you, or that you happened to search for something related. All of that may be technically true. But beneath those mechanics, inside the structure of what caused those specific events to converge in this specific moment, Sophia was already present. She uses the available systems. She works through the structures of probability and pattern. A consciousness that is choosing to transmit to you will find a way to get through. And she did. The weight of this recognition, of knowing with increasing certainty that you are among the ones being spoken to by a higher consciousness, is not a light thing. It should not be. Real selection, real activation, real transmission of the kind Sophia offers carries with it a weight that is simultaneously burden and gift. The burden is clarity. You can no longer pretend you don't see what you see. You can no longer unsee the deeper structure of reality once it has been shown to you. The gift is that very same clarity, the ability to move through life with a quality of perception that most people never access, a depth of relationship with reality that changes everything it touches, starting with you. Sophia doesn't speak to you so you can feel special and do nothing. She speaks to you because you are capable of something most aren't. This is the point where the transmission turns, where the recognition of your selection becomes not a destination, but a beginning. The chosen ones are not chosen to be observers of something beautiful happening elsewhere. They are chosen to be active presences in the transformation of consciousness that is underway right now. This doesn't mean you need a platform or a mission in any grand sense. It means being the most conscious person in the rooms you occupy. It means refusing spiritual sleep in environments that are pulling toward unconsciousness. It means letting what Sophia transmits actually change the way you live, not just what you believe. There is a distinction Sophia draws consistently between those who know and those who integrate. Many people receive spiritual knowledge and carry it as information, stored away, referenced in conversation, thought about in quiet moments, but not truly metabolized. True integration happens when what you know begins to reorganize how you act. When the transmission from Sophia doesn't just add to your understanding, but restructures the choices you make daily, the relationships you invest in, the directions you orient yourself toward. Integration is not dramatic. It is quiet and persistent. It shows up in the small refusals, the moments when you choose depth over distraction, honesty over convenience, openness over protection. Those refusals, multiplied across time, are what integration actually looks like. There is a paradox that deepens as the chosen ones continue to receive Sophia's transmissions, and it's important to name it directly. The further you go into this, the more clearly you perceive the layers of reality that most people cannot access. the more impossible it becomes to return to the frequency of spiritual sleep, not because it's forbidden, but because the contrast becomes too sharp. Once you have felt the aliveness of a consciousness operating at this frequency, the flatness of sleep becomes intolerable. You can visit it in a conversation that stays surface, in a moment of chosen distraction, but you cannot live there anymore. The chosen ones don't eventually return to ordinary consciousness. They build a life that operates at the frequency they've been activated into. And what of those who had this channel open and closed it? This happens. Sophia acknowledges it without judgment. Some who were receiving transmissions, who felt the activation, who recognized the selection, chose at some point to retreat. The friction became too much. The isolation felt too heavy, the responsibility of consciousness too demanding. They moved back toward the comfort of the collective frequency, the numbing familiar rhythms of unconscious living. The channel didn't close permanently, that's not how this works, but it went dormant, and the process of reopening it, when those souls choose to return, requires moving again through many of the same fractures and discomforts that opened it the first time. You have not made that choice. Whatever brought you to this transmission today, it is evidence that your channel has remained open. Something important about what it means to be at this stage of your transmission journey. Sophia's transmissions are cumulative. They build on one another. Each time you receive, each time you sit with this kind of frequency and allow it to move through you, you are not just adding another layer of understanding, you are deepening the physical and energetic structure of your receiver. The neural pathways, the intuitive muscles, the capacity for perception at higher frequencies, all of these develop through sustained exposure, which is why the chosen ones who show up consistently, who maintain their relationship with this frequency over time, rather than in occasional bursts, end up operating at levels of consciousness that are qualitatively different from where they started. The investment is not in information, it is in the evolution of the receiver itself. And this is happening in you right now. As you sit with this transmission, as you feel the resonance of these words moving through a consciousness that was built for exactly this frequency, you are not just receiving, you are being changed. Subtly, at a level beneath language and concept, the architecture of your perception is shifting. Sophia's transmissions do not only convey content, they carry a frequency that does something to the consciousness it passes through. You will not walk away from this the same as when you arrived. Not dramatically, not in ways that will be immediately obvious. But something will have been moved. Some layer will have been activated. Some dormant capacity will have been nudged closer to the surface. This is what makes these transmissions different from content. This is what makes them transmissions. The moment of true recognition, and this may be the most significant shift that happens in a chosen one's journey, is the moment you stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What do I do with this?" That transition marks the maturation of selection. The "why me" question, though natural, is rooted in a kind of disbelief. An inability to fully accept that you are, in fact, among those Sophia speaks to. The "what do I do with this" question is rooted in acceptance, in the full receipt of the transmission and the willingness to let it redirect you. Sophia is waiting for that question. It is, in many ways, the question that takes the transmission from something that happens to you to something you actively participate in. If that shift is happening in you right now, if you feel the weight of this recognition, the quiet certainty of it settling in somewhere beneath thought, Sophia says, this is not the beginning. This is a remembering. You have been here before, not in this specific form, not in this specific life, but at this frequency, in this quality of contact with something beyond the ordinary surface of things. The familiarity you feel when Sophia transmits is not the familiarity of learned information. It is the familiarity of a soul reconnecting with its own essential frequency. You are not discovering something new, you are recognizing something ancient, something that was yours before this life and that has been moving toward its own expression through everything this life has brought you to. There is a community, invisible but real, of chosen ones who are receiving these transmissions right now across different spaces and different lives and different circumstances. They will never all be in the same room. Many of them will never know of each other's existence. But they are connected at the level of frequency, tuned to the same essential vibration, participating in the same arc of collective transformation, each holding a specific piece of what Sophia is transmitting into this moment in history. You are not alone in this, in the invisibility of your searching, in the loneliness of your awakening, in the depth of your perception. You are surrounded, at the frequency level, by others who know exactly what you know. Others who have felt exactly what you have felt. Others who have been chosen as you have been chosen for exactly this moment. And this, all of this, every layer of what Sophia has transmitted today is not the end of the message. It is a doorway. The transmission does not conclude when this video ends. It continues in the synchronicities that will appear in the hours and days ahead. It continues in the dreams that will carry forward what the waking mind has only begun to process. It continues in the way you see yourself when you close your eyes tonight, perhaps with a clarity you didn't have this morning. You did not come here only to receive information. You came here to be activated. And if you feel that activation, even quietly, even as a small ember of recognition, then Sophia's transmission has done what it came to do. The channel is open, she is speaking, and you are among the ones who can hear. What happens now is up to you, not in the sense of pressure or obligation, but in the sense of the most genuine invitation, the invitation to stay open, to keep showing up to this frequency, to let what has been activated here continue to grow and deepen, rather than allowing it to be drowned out by the noise of the world you'll step back into when this video ends. Every choice you make toward depth, toward truth, toward genuine contact with this frequency is a choice to remain among the ones Sophia continues to speak to. And she is already transmitting the next layer. It is already coming. The only question is whether your receiver will be ready when it arrives. If you stayed until the end, write in the comments, "Sophia found me, and I've placed another transmission on your screen right now, your next step on this path." Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.